What is the Rome Scotland Rally? Well, I ought to be able to answer that, at least in part, because we've just finished day 4 of the 2023 version through the south and into the borders and Dumfries and Galloway. We are mostly at the Kenbridge Hotel. That's just outside New Galloway, and I think there are around about 50 riders, not all here. Some are camping, some are in the hotel, and most are destined for the bar. The man who started the rally and who can explain it best to me for this podcast, who I'm keeping from the bar, is Calum Munro, and I've arranged to meet him at the back of the hotel overlooking a fabulous river view as the May sun slowly sinks in the sky. However, it is a little bit windy round there, so I hope that's not going to be too much of a problem.
You've really made your rod for your own back here, haven't you? Do you have to do this every year?
Well, yeah, I know. Well, so far it's just felt nice to have a project in the winter to try and kind of make sure I get a little bit of track exploring done in the winter, and I'm always a bit ahead of myself anyway, so I usually have the next year's route mostly planned, and then I go and check little bits that I'm not sure about. But actually, one of the things I was wondering about was trying and make it a bit more participatory in terms of other people suggesting routes in the group and suggesting dates, times that they might want to go away, do it at a different time, or use the routes that are already there. So, yeah, that might be a way to go in the future, is just open it up so it doesn't feel so much like it's just me sorting a route and see who else fancies doing something similar.
So is the idea that there will always be 3 routes and you'll alternate between them from year to year? Or do you intend to come up with a different route every year? Because and let's talk about the ones you've done. Yeah. So let's go through. What was the first?
Yeah, the first was after the first experience of doing the Torino Nice Rally, 2018. I just thought, right, I need to do this at home. So the first one was the spine of Scotland route, and going from my home in Edinburgh back to my childhood stomping ground around Inverness. So yeah, that was the first one, and actually, I suppose, I mean, I just kind of made that thinking I'll share it with the people on the TNR group and see if anyone turns up. I was like, well, we'll see. And I don't know, I think maybe 30 odd of us, 35 something the first year. So I think just because people enjoyed it, even though the weather wasn't that great the first year, I thought, well, I'll make another route. That was fun last winter. And so it's sort of ruled that way. So the next route was
Before we get on to the next route, let's just do a little bit of housekeeping. TNR, Torino Nice Rally. If people want to find out what that's about, there are 2 podcasts. You can scroll back in your feed and you'll find one that I've done after my experience of riding the Torino Nice. And even further before that, you'll find a chat with James Olson, who is the creator of the Torino Nice. And you can probably guess where it goes from and to: Torino to Nice, Turin to Nice. And it's through the Alps. And it has a very different feel because it's a very different part of the world. It's a very different country as it's going through the high alpine gravelly roads. So you can't replicate that here, but your spine of Scotland, starting in Edinburgh, kind of made its way over to the Badger Divide, didn't it, and sort of went up bits of that? Yeah,
probably. I'm a bit strange in that I love making routes, but I don't often look at a lot of other people's routes.
Oh, so you don't know whether it goes on there?
I think you're right. I think the Badger Divide is a lot of similar territory. And the first year we didn't go through Karur doing the spine route, but actually I think that probably is a nicer way to go. So yeah, I think it does do a fair bit of similar territory in that, but just coming from the Edinburgh side.
I interrupted you as you were going to talk about the next generation on, the next year on, when you thought, I'll do something different.
Yeah, the next year doing the West Coast and the islands, I guess I spent a lot of time down in that bit of Argyll in my childhood because my grandparents retired out there near Loch Melfort. So I guess I knew that territory quite well too. and I think the islands are so fantastic. It adds something interesting, sometimes frustrating with the ferries.
Oh,
but
absolutely. Yeah.
Usually just really nice to have a
Yeah.
wee break and get on a ferry and hop between some islands.
But it also adds a bit of pressure because you've got to make the ferry, otherwise the next one could
yeah.
be an hour or so later.
Yeah, that's right. So it adds a little element in of a little bit of jeopardy of getting,
Jeopardy,
getting the
that's a better
ferry you want.
And that was started sort of it started down Arran, so
Yeah.
Arran was the southern boundary, and I think Fort William was about as high up as it went. Wasn't
That's
it?
right, and sort of looping round, so through Oban,
Yeah.
or close to on the way up, and then up Glencoe,
Yeah.
round your bit, and then Wood and Strontian, and then down onto Mull to finish up back at Oban. So yeah, I quite like. I suppose I just find I like meandering. So I kind of just want to find the best gravel routes that are connected up with the smallest possible roads. So I usually end up meandering all over the place, but trying to start and end somewhere where people can get to it reasonably easily, at least.
And this one, we are in the. Actually, we are pretty much close to the middle of it. Here at Kenbridge, end of day 4.
Yeah.
The south and the borders route. I mean,
Yeah.
we particularly liked it because it's an area we don't know that well,
Yeah.
compared to the west.
Yeah.
And what was the idea for this one? What were you trying to pull together? Because they're quite disparate areas.
They are. I mean, I suppose.
Surprisingly so, actually.
Yeah, surprisingly so. I have a bit of a recipe of like doing about 100k a day, and on average, and about 1,300 metres of climbing or a bit more, something in that sort of territory. So I have that in my mind. But I think down here, I mean, it was nice for me actually, because the borders I know quite well, because it's sort of reachable from Edinburgh, or long rides from Edinburgh, or a couple of day trips from Edinburgh. But over in Dumfries and Galloway, this territory was somewhere. Although I did a job down the road in Dumfries for 6 months when I was a junior doctor, I didn't really leave the hospital very often. So this was all new to me, and in some ways coming just somewhere that you've never been to before, looking at the map, thinking, oh, I'll look at that forest. So I did a recce ride down here a couple of summers ago, and then ended up changing the route quite a lot because of what I found. So I suppose it's more open country, sort of long views, sort of spacious down here compared with further north. And I think it gives you that sort of, it's a nice mix of kind of rolling agricultural land and big bits of forestry. And
It's
I guess,
cows, sheep and trees, isn't it?
yeah, there's a lot of that, and getting down to the coast sort of nice to get a bit of that coastal scenery.
That was a moment when we went through Gretna.
Yeah.
It was like somebody flicked a switch and the sky just went into Technicolor and widescreen.
Yes.
It was just flatter and bigger.
Yeah. And
it
the
was
Solway Firth just across there
absolutely.
to see down to England. Yeah, it was lovely.
But you've hinted at this, at the work you put into these, and you clearly don't just sit down there with some mapping program and work out, because you could do that. You could say, take me from there to there.
Yeah.
Join up these points, and it would do it for you.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't quite end up with a Calum route.
Yeah, that's probably right. I mean, I suppose it's quite simple though. In some, I don't know. I'm a bit map geeky. My dad brought me up in the Highlands, going out in the hills, going out cycling, looking at maps. So it's just sort of normal for me to think about contours and.
And do you look at maps when you're planning this, or do you look at them online?
I look at paper maps.
Yeah.
Well, I'm old enough. I still look at paper maps a bit, but I have the Ordnance Survey on my phone, and then I usually have the Ordnance Survey and the Ride with GPS, and I'm kind of looking between the two.
Because Liz was giving me pelters for actually not having a paper map of this. She wanted a paper map with a highlighter trail of where we're going. So she go, no, if you want to change it from there to there, I don't look at your little phone thing.
I know, it's true. Well, I know you do lose something in not having a big map. Like we did a big trip once on the road through the Alps from like Lake Geneva to Trieste a number of years ago, and
Cal, have you got my purse?
oh yeah.
Did you get the shower working?
Yeah, it's ringing.
Yeah. No, it's fine. That was Harriet with having had a minging shower. Have you had yours yet?
No.
Okay, you're probably better off without it if it's that bad.
I'll have a wee swim.
Tony, well, you were telling us about your trip to, what was it? To Trieste.
To Trieste. And I remember when we got to Trieste, I had to buy a big, I think it's the sort of Italian touring club map that covered the whole area, so that I could put a line over it and see the whole thing, because that was doing somebody else's route and being guided, so that was a totally different thing. So I know that feeling of needing to get an overview sometimes. So I do get the paper map out for an overview.
But when you are putting it together, do you know the patches you want to link together?
I think so.
Because what I ought to explain to people is, you do it twice. You're not comparing. I think this is absolutely mental, but brilliant at the same time. That not content with producing a fantastic, really challenging route, you also do a second, easier version.
Yeah.
So you have the rugged version and the rolling version. We've been using the rolling version a lot, I have to say, and making a much nicer journey of it. But I mean, crikey, Calum.
Well, do you know, I think I didn't do that the first year, and then the second year, I maybe do have a tendency to make life complicated for myself sometimes in general. But I just thought, I mean, I'm not interested in going fast particularly or racing. I like to challenge myself. But I know as I get older as well, that at different times of the year, whether you're injured or you've been sick, you might want to challenge yourself, but how you challenge yourself is actually doing something shorter.
Absolutely.
And you might have a really bad day on one of these things, and you just feel rubbish and knackered, and you want to just take it more easily. And like I think Steve did today, I mean, he's usually super strong, and I think he just felt knackered. He thought, I'll take the shorter route. And then you recuperate and see what you feel like tomorrow. So, yeah, I suppose it's trying to get it to the shorter route to start and finish in roughly the same place can be a wee bit challenging at times. So I start with the rugged route and then I work back from there. And yeah, I sort of find the patches of big tracks that I think there'll be a good track experience section in. But for me, I'm not like hardcore, I'm not a mountain biker or anything like that. I like to have a bit of track, and then I like to have a little bit of tarmac for the change. And I like to find, the reasonably good gravel rather than anything that's getting too chunky or too single track. I mean, there's always a wee bit of that you need to join bits up, but trying to make it for gravel bikes. And
and how do you go about getting the atmosphere, or does that just come when you get good weather? Because that was something I liked about it, that as I've said to you, I'm not as strong as I was in September last year when I did the Torino Nice, and Liz, it's one of her first bikepacking trips. So we are looking at the easier days, and some of them are cutting short. But I don't feel nobody's sort of going cheating. Like, don't talk to them. They're the wimps over there. It's got a really laid back vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because there's. But I feel like I need to sort of give James Olsen credit for that, because I did take basically the experience of that. I was just amazed at how friendly and sort of just supportive everyone was, even though everyone was riding it differently. I think we mostly did it staying in B&Bs and guest houses and things, because the thought of carrying all our camping stuff was too much for us. But it was exactly the same. People weren't like looking down on us because we were staying in a hotel. So I think that whole vibe of it, it's not a race, people doing it at their own pace, changing the route if they want to. That just feels like what TNR was like for me. And and James has some shortcuts in there. And I suppose I'm maybe a little bit more concrete in my thinking, so I sort of do it day by day more than James does for his route, and he sort of leaves it open. But I know that people then adjust it however they want to, because there are some people I think about a day ahead.
Oh gosh, yes.
That I've hardly seen.
We're all in the same WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
And my mate Keith, who works at Borders General,
Keith?
yeah.
Right.
He used to be in Spoon Bridge, and we used to swim at the pool, and I know him from various things. But yeah,
He's
I mean,
cracking
my
on.
God,
Yeah.
you know, and he made his own bags as well, I believe.
Oh, right.
Keith, I'm sorry, I'm talking about you. I should be talking to you. But if you were here, I would be.
Yeah.
How did you start all this cycling, Lark? I mean, what was it that opened this up for you? You spoke about your dad taking to you the hills. Was that your introduction? Was you from that in Inverness part of the world?
Yeah, my family moved back up there because we've got roots up there when I was quite young, and so yeah, my family still live. My sister and my mum and dad in the Black Isle in a village called Muirvord.
Just above Bewley.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, well, I think we moved up there because my parents both like hill walking and sailing and cycling. So from when I was about 10 or 11, we went away on cycle touring trips around the Highlands as well as hill walking. So I had that experience of cycle touring really young. And I did really love it when I was really young, and then, became a grumpy teenager and couldn't be arsed with it for a while.
So you probably did a lot of the North Coast 500 before it was a gleam in some marketing person's eye.
Yeah. No, that was one of the earliest trips we did was up to Tongue, through like Helmsdale and round by Scowrie and back to Ullapool. Yeah. So, yeah.
But when you became a teenager, you kind of put it away, and presumably with a background in medicine, you wouldn't have had too many free time to go.
Well, that's probably it, yeah. And then lived down in London a bit when I was finishing my training, so that there wasn't a lot of much happening then. But when we came back to Scotland, got into road biking again, and my wife got the bug, and in fact more so than I do. She's always powering ahead.
Yeah, she might have had a minging shower, but she's pretty good on a bike.
She's pretty strong on a bike. And I think it was her that found the Torino Nice and saw the first film that they did after the first year, the bomb track film, and she was like, "Oh, that looks amazing." And then I got a gravel bike, and I think it kind of joined together kind of hill walking, cycle touring, getting off into the wilds, and then the experience on Torino Nice was so great. I was like, "Oh yeah, I really love this," and I don't do a lot of road biking anymore because I prefer getting out into the hills.
There's
and
the tangling
tracks.
with traffic thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. It really appeals. I mean, the traffic in Edinburgh's not too bad, and around Edinburgh there's lots of littler roads to get onto. So yeah, we still go out a bit of road biking, but it's a nice freedom to. Okay, you have to deal with a little bit of bumpiness, pay attention to the surface, but you don't have to think about a ton of metal hurtling towards you, which is quite nice. Yeah.
Interesting. When people listen to this, the previous month will have been Marcus Stitz talking about his new book, Bikepacking Scotland. And one of the first questions I asked him was to define bikepacking. And it's a very tricky question to do. But something that you just said to me actually helped put it into... Because I was thinking really it's about equipment, but it's not. It's that very attitude of kind of getting out into the hills with all your stuff on your back.
Yeah.
It is like backpacking, and that's where it's come across from that. It's not really cycle touring where the emphasis was always on road. There were the idiots, the adventurous ones of the rough stuff going off into the Alps, carrying their bikes. But this is like that. It's travelling through a landscape with all you need.
I think it does open that up, that sense of, being a bit like a snail with your life on your back and maybe not rushing. I like to think of it that way, but having all you need.
Yeah.
That feels quite nice, and being able to do it, dip into a town, a village, get some supplies, and then be able to be off into the wilder parts.
And also to stop where you want. Like today, we saw we went off track to find this castle.
Yeah.
And we're going down some goodness knows where we ended up. But it was just that freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah. To have a bike that can kind of do a bit of everything.
Go anywhere.
And
once it starts, do you worry about rally? I mean, do you feel proprietorial for all the people who are around here? I mean, you're not going up and going, are you having a good time? Are you I know you're not doing that. You're far too laid back for that. But, I mean, to what extent do you think, hope it's going well?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, funnily enough, I think after the experience of the first year, when I was probably really quite anxious about how it would be, when a bunch of people did say they fancied coming, I realised even that year, though, I think after the sort of a few hours on the bike the first day, I was like, oh, it's okay, you know, everything's going all right. People will crack on, and if stuff goes wrong, people just sort themselves out. So I think I tend to be a little bit stressed about it the week before, and then
because there'll be last-minute changes, won't there? To not to your route, but to the route you've planned. Someone will put up like a diversion or something.
Sometimes, or just like, I think I just start worrying. Well, I hope I did check that bit properly.
Oh, we had
one
like
enough.
that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
We were on a different route. We were on the rolling route.
Yeah, we had a wee bit where when I'd gone and recce'd it, I'd gone a bit up a track, and then because I knew the track at the top of that track that it joined, I just didn't bother doing the 2 or 3 kilometres in the middle because it looked all right. And then it turns out there were loads of fallen trees on it when folk went through it. But, you know, everyone seemed to be pretty cool about
I think they enjoyed
around
it, actually.
trees, yeah.
I think they took it as a bit of an adventure.
Yeah. So I think that's actually part of it. People that come to do this sort of thing so far, everyone's been like reasonably experienced in doing enough of this kind of thing that they kind of know stuff can go wrong, and you're kind of self-supported and doing your own thing. So, I haven't felt. It's not been too burdensome.
Nobody's threatened to sue you yet for taking up the wrong path or something.
No, and the good thing is my wife's a insurance litigator, so I'd have a good defender. I'd be able to.
That is fantastic news. I might need a word with her. Completely different. So is that it? To what extent can you now sort of hang up your route planning hat and just rock through these 3 routes?
Right. No. The plan is now definitely 5.
Where did that come from?
Yeah. So we have the East Coast route, which we've not really done the East and the Cairngorms yet.
Of course.
And the far north. We've kind of touched on it in the Spine route, but only just up to a bit up Strathfield and back over towards the Black Isle. So we have the north and the northwest bit to do, and the east. So I'm looking at 5. I did kind of I started to think, maybe the most westerly point to the most easterly point, I could do a shoulder of Scotland as well. But
that's been done as a road biking thing. Wilderness Scotland used to offer it as a holiday. Because they used to stay in the Strontian Hotel before we went out to Ardnamurchy.
Okay.
So I know all that.
Right.
So 5. So you've got
5
2 more. We're going to be seeing a lot of you on the East Coast.
Yeah, I think
driving up there.
Yeah, I think next year I'll be doing a bit of it. I've got a rough plan in my head, but there's definitely a bit of exploring to be done up there to find the best sort of gravelish route, because some of the bits in the Cairngorms get a little bit mountain bikey in parts.
Yeah.
So a bit of exploring up there this year, and I kind of have a good plan for the north anyway, because that's more.
I was going to say, do you? Because I thought that was all either roads or flow country.
Well,
there are some tracks.
It's tricky, and I was speaking to Steve about it as well, because he, after the Spine route the first year, Steve Grace, who's been on all of these, he, as he does, just decided, I think I'll just carry on, and he went further up north, up all the way to Durness, and then out to the lighthouse in the most northwesterly point. So there's the difficulty is with the North Coast 500 that it's become so busy as a road route. So I'm sort of imagining I might need to do it a bit differently and maybe do some out and backs to certain points so that we're not getting stuck on the North Coast 500 route. So I have this kind of slightly more sort of out and back 3 little sections off a loop that I think we can do.
Right.
So I'm working on that, but I think I've got a rough plan.
Sort of spokes of a wheel.
Exactly. A bit more spokey. Yeah. So we'll see where we get with that.
When would you stop doing this? When do you think it would get too big? Because how many people do it now?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think last year and this year we're about 45. So it's and there's an interesting core of people who have done all three now, who keep on coming back and seem quite up for trying to do all the different areas of Scotland. And I've always been a bit ambivalent about whether I want to make it to sort of promote it, although here I am talking to you about it.
Yeah, okay.
Because I'm not sure if I want it to be much bigger numbers, because I think this is enough that most people find somebody who's going at roughly their pace and they meet other folk. And because there's the two routes that are overlapping, you kind of bump into different people at different points.
And the villages won't feel invaded. I mean, like 200 people arriving in one place. It's not like the mountains in the Alps where you do have automatically spread out.
So, and also have facilities maybe more in a lot of the places there. So I think, I mean, actually I think I'm more aware of it down in the southwest here, that there's not quite so much kind of touristy infrastructure, places, B&Bs or things like that. There's enough for a group this size. I think most people are finding what they need. But yeah, I wonder. I think some of the routes might be okay with a bit more, but so we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I'll do the 5 and then
go back to the start again?
And may probably go back to the start.
Yeah.
And it's kind of covers all the main areas of Scotland for those 5.
And then who knows?
Yeah, we'll
just
see.
maybe stick them out there as those sort of like, permanent audaxes or something.
Yeah.
Because presumably people can do these at any time of the year. They don't have to take part in this rally.
Absolutely. And I sort of see the routes as like, they're not my routes. It's just like, it's Scotland and you can go where you want, and pretty much, and anyone can make up these kind of routes. So I've always wanted to make them open access and available, and just make them public routes on Ride with GPS and available on my website. And the only thing that adds when I do it as a rally is I ask people to do a donation for a charity, and then I make a ride guide that has a lot more detail in it. And so I'll just probably continue to ask people if they want to do the route at any other time and have the ride guide, to make a donation to the charity.
That makes sense.
And then I send the ride guide to them. So, but the routes themselves, people should just be able to go and use them and I'd like
change them and adapt them as they
change
will.
them and adapt them, and then if they do the route and they tell me they've done it, I'll send them a little badge as well, so that they've got some reward.
Tell me about the charities, because you're doing a different one this year. What was the ones you used in the past?
Yeah, so it was a charity that I was doing some work with, sort of psychological work with a community development charity called Link Up, who work in deprived communities in Scotland, and I was doing some support work for their community development workers, and I just felt that was a good organisation for me to raise a little bit of cash for. And then the last year we raised it specifically for one of their projects, which is called the Galatown Bike Hub, which is in Fife in Kirkcaldy, and Shuggy, who's the guy who runs that, was on the trip last year and came on the trip, so we raised money for them last year. And this year it's a charity called Talking Tandems, which Lindsay Leinster, who came on the trip last year, she volunteers for them, and she suggested they'd be a good charity for us to raise money for. A small charity taking people with visual impairments out on tandems and talking them through the scenery. And I think, raising a couple of grand for them means quite a lot to them in terms of their running costs. So it's nice to be able to do something, and haven't quite worked out who we'll go for next year, but it's nice to raise a little bit of money for different, I suppose for me it's often about mental health or cycling related things. So I'll probably carry on in the same vein.
One of the first persons we rode with was Jim. who is a volunteer with Talking Tandems, who hadn't actually heard of the Rome Scotland Rally, he tells me, until this. And he thought, I better do it.
Yeah.
Have you seen where he is?
Yes.
He's got a great spot, just the other side of the river there. And because he's wearing that fluorescent jacket, you can see him for miles.
Yeah.
So he said, that's why you want fluorescent. He likes that.
He's a tough man.
Hey, listen, I appreciate you talking to me, Calum, and
Great.
especially when you got to go in there and have your... Are you going to have that shower? What do you reckon? That wasn't a hint, by the way.
That's
nearly
great.
25 to 9.
No, it's really nice to talk to you too. Thanks a lot.
And thanks for such a good read.
Great, thank you.
If you found all that interesting, then keep an eye on the Rome Scotland Rally website for details of next year's event. There'll be a link to that website in the show notes. By the time you hear this, there should also be the video of my 2023 ride on the Always Another Adventure YouTube page. And as I say, I'll link that too. There'll also be a link to buy me a very small virtual coffee as a way of saying thank you for these podcasts. I think it's a £3 payment, and it just helps go towards the hosting charges for keeping all these on the server. And if you have enjoyed it, it would be fantastic if you'd consider leaving me a review on whatever platform you listen. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. It's always really helpful. I'm Simon Willis, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.